Hey everyone, this video is regarding the Week 4 assignment for the Typography Fundamentals course at Stark State. And what I did is just did a little bit of homework myself so I could demonstrate what I want you to do this week. First off, you take the name, you guys will have a different name, and you try and find a font that intelligently corresponds with the text. So I wrote the word medieval times. This is kind of a given. In medieval times, it was common that they used Gothic typefaces. And I've got many of the examples that you have, you're going to be able to find some pretty much stereotypical fonts that will match up with it. Of course, it's a learning curve to figure out what those fonts are. Here's some suggestions for that. You might look up some films or books that are related to the actual text you're seeing, and try to figure out what fonts are being used for that. If you find three or four the same category of font being used 3 or 4 times, you've recognized a pattern, and you'll probably figure out that is a very common font for that particular thing. For example, old Western films or new Western films, you see a ton of slab serifs used because of the time period that slab serifs came out, which was during the Industrial Revolution. But I digress. There's a lot of rationale here that could possibly overwhelm you. You really don't have to answer all these questions. I'm just trying to give you some direction. Let's be clear about this template, though. Whenever you say this is a PDF, this section will disappear. It won't be there at all. It's non-printable. If you go to layers, which you don't have to understand this yet, but you'll see this italic hint section right there. It may or may not be locked for you. The bottom line is anything on this layer is, and when you highlight anything in this layer, that it turns red. None of that stuff's going to show up. But where it says, what is the history of the type category, and what is the history of the particular typeface you chose, you don't have to answer all these questions. You just answer the ones that you can. You try to answer several of them. The idea is to do some research. Whether it's, I suggest using the non-designer book and the type rules book, of course, and that's going to help you the most. But typography isn't restricted to these books. There's tons of stuff on the internet, and most of it's pretty accurate. I know that the internet lies about a lot of stuff, but not really this topic. If it's a popular website, it's common information. So let me show you what I mean. Here's the category black letter, or also known as Gothic type. There's all types of history you can read on Gothic type. As you can see right here, yes, it's Wikipedia. No, that doesn't mean it's 100% accurate. But if you're a little bit off, I don't mind. And I actually did a second example as well. By the way, I might as well read this to you. I said I chose Gothic type because it was common during the medieval time period. I think it creates a classic feel because it predates many more modern typefaces. This particular font is a bold heading. I find it a little hard to read and would never consider using it for body copy. So I would not want to read paragraphs of this stuff, but I think it'd be a great title. I have a lot to say about Gothic type, so I'll avoid that right now, but it's a pretty cool font with a pretty rich history. My second example is Need for Speed. I was tempted to just use some sort of Fast and the Furious font, and I thought to myself, well, I'll find a script instead. And I found a script that looks like it's moving fast because it's italic and it's tilted forwards. I also chose the color red because it's an exciting, warm, hot color, which a lot of times it's associated with speed, because blue is kind of calm and red is kind of exciting. But basically here, that's what I established. I chose a script because it has a humanistic feel, and its slanted shape implies it is moving forward. Again, that isn't straight out of the book or anything. It's partially my own opinion. Older script fonts are more fancy and formal, and this is true. The script is more casual, and this script is more casual and informal. It looks like it's written by a human being who doesn't have perfect handwriting. The strokes have a lot of thick to thin transition. Notice that right there. It gets really thick right there and really thin right there, making it a little hard to read. I consider it thick and fun enough to be a good title typeface, so it could be used as the title for something. I'm assuming and suggesting that everything you pick be a title typeface. Seriously. And of course, remember that you can just go out online and you can download fonts. So when I looked up this Speedy font, I just typed in I typed in fast fonts or Speedy fonts, and a ton of them popped up. I had that open here, but I guess I closed it. I'm not going to look it up again. I'm sure you get the idea. But make sure and read everything on the right here, and don't get overwhelmed. It's a big deal that you can recognize categories. In your non-designer's design book, there are actual tests you can take near the end of the book in the typography chapters. Whatever I assigned for reading this week, it tells you. If you do the reading, you'll actually be able to take tests. You're going to hear different names for different fonts or font categories. I know the different names, so don't worry if you end up saying old style rather than saying serif. If you say serif or you say old style, I'll figure it out. I'm not going to be super strict. It doesn't have to be. You're reading two different books for this, and I'm saying you can source the internet, so you're going to end up with some different terms. I know most of these terms, and I will work with you. But for the most part, the terms you should focus on, if you Google categories of type on the web, it's right here. Serif, slab serif, sans serif scripts, novelty or decorative fonts. Old English is another name for Gothic type. There are different names for these things. But if you look up images on the web, you'll actually see, and this might help. You could maybe copy and paste this into your homework assignment. Like this, for example, you can just copy and paste it right in. If you're really worried and you're trying to remember the names of these categories and it's stressing you out, you could just paste that in here and make sure that you're not like me and on the hidden layer. There you go. And you can keep that with you. If you used any of these, I would figure it out. If this does, novelty is the same thing as decorative. So I hope that helps you out with your homework for this week. Just wanted to give you some idea what I'm asking for. I know that all the stuff I wrote over here on the right might seem a little bit overwhelming. I'm not asking you to answer every single question. I'm just asking you to do a little bit of research and not just share your opinion. The category is a big deal, and every category has a history. So you could just say something about the history of that category or the uses for that category. In summary, it really just goes sans serifs are more modern. They're always going to be more modern, and then it backs off from there to more classic typefaces, and the classic typefaces sort of end when you hit Old English. That's really this fancy. We started off real fancy in the world of typography and in lettering, and we ended up really simple with the sans serif, which dropped the thick to thin transition and dropped the serifs. That's where we're at in history when you think about typography. Well, I hope that helps. Thanks for listening.